Welcome to the Building Web3 Podcast. Today with Renato from SayNode. Discover how they're revolutionizing mobile Web3 development and making crypto dApps easier and more secure. Remember, nothing stated here is financial advice. Welcome to the Building Web3 Podcast. Today, my good friend Renato. He is the co-founder at SayNode. Renato, before we get too deep into SayNode, could you give me a brief background into yourself and what was your come to crypto moment?
Yeah, absolutely. Like most people, my crypto journey started with regret that I didn't bought earlier. In the case of Bitcoin, I was still a teen and read about Bitcoin the first time. Even answered some guy on Reddit that he should transfer his money using Bitcoin, but didn't buy any myself. And then 2017 is when I did the deep dive during my studies, and that's when it really clicked for me.
Absolutely. So let's bridge the gap. So you learn about crypto, you start getting into it in 2017. Then what brought you to found SayNode?
Yeah, so I was studying business administration at that time, and I read every white paper I could get my hands on instead of actually studying at uni. That's basically what I did. Then once I had my bachelor's, I switched to a computer science degree, did as much as I required to get started actually coding, and then started a company right after. And what got me into it is really the realization that in terms of dApps, most protocols were heavily reliant on web back in the days and still are to a large degree. And where I see the mass adoption of Bitcoin and crypto is really on the mobile side. So that's where I saw a gap in the market.
Absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about mobile as it pertains to Web3, because when I think of Web3, I largely think of dApps on my desktop, or maybe that's just how I use them. So to talk to us a little bit about like mobile adoption in Web3.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what most people combine in their head when they hear Web3. But I think if we want to reach the broad masses, we really need to get into mobile. And there's multiple reasons why mobile is preferable for many Web3 applications, maybe not all, but of course, security is one big aspect. Mobile software usually is more secure than saving stuff on the desktop or in the web browser. That's one aspect. And then it just opens up a lot of possibilities, of course, in terms of where you use your applications. If you think about learn-to-earn projects or other dApps that benefit heavily by being available on the go, that's where mobile really shines, of course, because people can use some dApps while they're commuting or while they have some dead time at their hands. And that's where we can get a lot of adoption.
Yeah, I remember talking to a few different companies. HiveMapper comes to mind, and I forget the other, is that it can sometimes be a very heavy lift to get users to download a new mobile application. That's why we may not see as much adoption there. Do you find that to be an issue with a lot of your customers, or do you think that's kind of changing?
Yeah, the mind space of apps that people are willing to download, of course, is shrinking. People are not eager to clog their phone up with another app, but in the end, it's about delivering value, right? If your app is valuable and interesting enough, then people are willing to download it. Mm-hmm. And crypto and Bitcoin has so much to offer in terms of value that wasn't possible before, that as long as you can provide them with this additional benefit that they couldn't get otherwise, they're willing to download this. And then the other option is, of course, that many people are now installing mobile wallets. And then if you create an interface that's seamless, where you can just connect to an existing wallet, that, of course, also lowers the hurdle, because they don't have to set up a new wallet in every new app they download. And by now you have more options of making things work that way.
Absolutely. What are some examples of successful Web3 mobile apps that you've seen or developed?
Yeah, so one that I really like is Chain Stuff. We are just about to launch, and the idea there really is quite simple. The idea is that right now you have headhunters that gain a lot of people's annual salary just by placing people in the right positions. But technically speaking, every one of us knows people that might fit into a position. So that's a market that's basically ripe for disruption. If you can just offer a way where everyone can be rewarded for referring other people to suitable jobs, that opens up a whole market that wasn't there before. And you couldn't build something like this with traditional finance, because you need to have programmable money, you need to have stable coins that you can send around to multiple parties if you want to align the incentives properly. So that's a perfect use case for even people that aren't aware that there's crypto going on under the hood, but they realize that if I just refer my friend to this job, I can get some real payout after that. So using blockchain while not really making it obvious to the user that they're dealing with a blockchain experience.
And you find that to be quite important. I always say the UX in Web3 land is quite horrible. If you think about it. And that my mother, she's going to start getting into crypto. She's not going to be like, oh, wow, how great, like blockchain. She'll just feel like it's like a normal app. How do you guys work on making the UX better?
One part is just integrating with the platforms people are familiar with. Like if they have to set up an entire new extension that they might not be familiar with, that's already a big no for many people. If, on the other hand, they have a mobile wallet, they can unlock it with biometrics and can sign in with Google, Facebook, all the accounts they already have. Of course, there's trade-off with self-custody to be made there, but overall, if you make the experience as familiar to them as possible and try to abstract away many of the complicated blockchain layers, that helps a lot. And then something that is close to our heart is to make the experience fun and gamified. With Bitcoin, with crypto, you can easily add tiny pieces of incentives wherever in the process you want. And that can motivate people greatly to stick with a learning progression, for example, or keep finishing uploading your CV in the example of chain stuff. You can just place these incentives wherever you need it in the user journey to make it happen.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about some of those user incentives, because when we talked with, I think it was called Building My Web3 Startup or something like that, they talked a lot about like point systems and how point systems have become very in vogue post it wasn't Blast, but what predated Blast? I'm completely blanking right now. Blur.
Yeah, with the point systems, I'm a bit of a skeptic when it comes to that. When I mean incentives, I don't mean just leaderboards and point systems. I'm more thinking of tangible benefits, be that actual Bitcoin or some other token that already has a value and is not, just a promise of future value. I think that's much more powerful because you can directly create these circular economies inside of apps, where you can prove to users, okay, you give me your data, for example. That's something we do in the medtech field. You give me your data, and in return, you get something with tangible value right away. And if you can create these marketplaces or actually give people the value back that they usually would give to an intermediary, Brave is a good example always. I use that by removing the middleman and distributing these rewards, everybody benefits in a way. If you can create a setup like that, that's win-win, while you still give some tangible benefit, that's always a good setup.
Got it. And let's imagine, a typical customer is going to come to you guys and maybe they have an idea for an app. What's kind of the process like for working with SayNode?
Yeah, excellent question, because that's the one of the main theses, right, of SayNode, that there's a ton of people by now, a lot of people that joined crypto retailers, that learned how the system goes, and after a while they had some idea of something they want to build, but they don't have the technical skills to do so, especially in mobile, because the libraries are comparatively still underdeveloped to web. So usually how we do this is we get the first contact of some customer, and then we just sit together and in a first step try to understand what they're trying to build. And then we try to keep it very lean once we have the general idea of what they're trying to do. Instead of writing up a long requirements list, we have our in-house UX, UI designers, and we just create a quick prototype of the app. So this is how it might look. You have this login screen, you have this leaderboard screen, you have this whatever the app requires. We try to get this out in 2 to 3 days, because if that's the first real aha moment that people that will be founders usually have when they for the first time see their idea as an actual visual representation that they can click through a bit. And that's of course still a long way from being an actual app, but just by spending these 1-2 days, you usually have a feeling for how the app might be. And when we have this Figma prototype, we then have a much more clear understanding of what they want to have. They themselves have a more clear understanding of what they try to build, can explain to us why something isn't working the way they had it in their mind in a way that they couldn't before. And then only once we agree on this Figma prototype, we can start planning out the development. Because otherwise you have a lot of back and forth and change requests that weren't necessary if you just work with a visual prototype first.
And then how long does a typical client need to get started? Like, you have the idea, you guys start meeting. When can that launch? Like, is it 60 days? Is it half a year?
Yeah. So our ambition is that within 1 week, we clarify all the requirements. We have this prototype. We agree on what the app should be able to do in a first step. And then once we have everything signed, first payment is made. Our ambition is that within 3 months, we should have something like an MVP that is usable, that's out there in the stores. One additional complication that we have as mobile developers, of course, compared to a website, is we can't just launch this thing and it's out there. We have the additional complexity of dealing with the duopoly that is Apple and Google for Android. And just getting through the stores, they're starting to warm up to crypto now, but just getting through the store reviews can take its time, and configuring everything, setting everything up. Usually within 3 months, we have something that's quite polished and can be launched to the public.
And what is the process like submitting an app? Let's even just imagine we're using Flutter. So we've got one code base, we've got 2, buildables, and then we have to go to the Google Play Store and then Apple. What happens in that review process?
Yeah. So the first things that happen before you even get to the store with Flutter is exactly the framework we prefer to use. Is the whole building process and making sure that everything runs, and then we automatically submit this to the store. We have some code pipelines that we set up there to save ourselves some time. And then once the store receives this, you have the choice of 2 bad options, and iOS is a bad option, Android is a bad option, but both these store systems are bad in a different way, not in the same way. And then you will have to go through multiple iterations. We have an internal QA team, and the way Apple and Android handle it is quite different. With Apple, you have these long public reviews that are quite in-depth, and you have many rounds of feedback and iteration, and it can take quite long. But once you have it through once and you meet that certain level of complexity or quality that they require, you can get stuff out pretty quickly, and you can manage testers pretty easily as well. With Android, it's different. The reviews are shorter, you can configure it like you want, but somehow they have a weird system that you can only publish things all at once in many cases. And they're less thorough in the reviews, but you have more options of how to manage these things, but you have to plan in some time at every step. So just different ways you can approach the store listings.
One of the reasons you mentioned that mobile, aside from maybe more users will have access, that more users will be mobile first, is that it's more secure. What do you mean by mobile app development is more secure than a web-based development?
Sure. So it's more secure in the sense that usually there's more malware present for desktop systems. That's one thing. And the other thing is that for Android and iOS, you have access to the secure element of the phone itself. There's also a secure element in other devices, of course, but in the browser extension, for example, this needs to, by definition, be online all the time. And also you just have less optionality of making the system secure in that sense. Whereas with mobile, you have some proven libraries that you can use and just simply build on top of those, and that aren't used as much in web, for example. You have the biometrics that help you do stuff in a way that is more user friendly, while also using the security features of the phone itself. Now, something that's pretty new and that's being pushed by Google, Microsoft, and Apple are passkeys, which work on the same private-public key cryptography as we use in blockchain in general, that are also used quite heavily now on mobile. A safe wallet of Coinbase, for example, is starting to use that. It's quickly evolving, the field. But overall, usually the tier list is lowest tier is web extension, then desktop wallet, mobile wallet, and of course, hardware wallets are still the gold standard.
Got it. And let's talk a little bit about, so we've seen Telegram start to embed things like mini apps within platforms. Do you see that this might be a trend where we'll have like overarching apps? Let's say like Coinbase would have like a smart wallet built into it, or do you still see like the trend being that most companies will have an individual app and this mini app trend is mostly just a trend?
There's a bunch of different trade-offs and considerations there. If you do a mini app, one thing you always have to keep in mind, of course, is that you're platform dependent. So you have one additional dependency. If Telegram decides to, okay, we do our own version of this now, then your business is screwed. Which is, of course, a bit ironic because we in the mobile development have a bit of the same situation with Apple and Android, but it's much broader and there's less control that's exerted right now. On the other hand, if you have a standalone app, that is more expensive because you have to build it out from scratch in a way. You have these tools like Flutter that assist you and help you a lot, but you have to put in all the functionality yourself. And also the store listing you have to take care of yourself. But if you want to have certain functionality in there, you have much more options like accessing geolocation data, getting more data from the user in general, also for ads tracking and marketing purposes. You just have a lot more freedom to operate if you do it standalone.
Got it. And let's talk about some of the verticals or the types of apps that you guys have worked on. So like medicine, education, HR tech, or is it largely just Web3, or is it kind of combining these systems? Yeah,
so far all the clients that we have use both blockchain and mobile to operate, which is nice. And in all the different verticals, blockchain has a key aspect. And some examples, it's a bit more in the background. On others, it's front and center. But all of them benefit from the blockchain itself. So, for example, in the medtech field, we worked on WellShare, which is also about to launch. End of the month, we have the launch date. And what they're trying to do is giving a user an option to monetize their medical data. Right now, it's quite hard to have data ownership if it's sensitive information, also related to GDPR. Like health data is very critical, of course, but having the ownership of this data is something that Web3 enables, and we want to reward this action of sharing this data with clinical research organizations or also other parties that might be interested in this data with tokens. So the idea there really is to also open up the marketplace again, give people back the ownership over their data, and reward them accordingly by sharing this data with third parties. So that's in the medical field. A similar case in EdTech is Wiser, our mobile app that we have for teaching Bitcoin and blockchain to the masses. The system is heavily influenced by something like Duolingo, where we try to gamify the process, break down these complex topics that for us by now, because we spent many hours talking about it and learning about it, have become a bit of second nature, but for many beginners are still very intimidating. Breaking these topics down into 2 to 3 minute classes, having a little quiz at the end, also rewarding them with loot boxes that contain some sats to get their first experience with Bitcoin going. So there as well, giving rewards to motivate users to take certain actions inside the app. Yeah, it's always a bit of I think blockchain and Bitcoin particularly are the prime examples of a prime technology for aligning human incentives, which was a huge problem so far. And in some cases it worked out fine, but now we have a proven methodology, a proven technology that can enforce incentive mechanisms to align humans in a way that wasn't possible before.
Yeah. What advice would you give to, we have a decent amount of developers in the audience, to them trying to enter like the Web3 space or the mobile app development space based on your experiences?
Yeah. What I would say is try to specialize. And this can go in different directions. Like we did it specifically with Flutter and its integration with blockchain. But even if you're on the protocol layer, try not to spread yourself too thin. Don't go after grants in every single ecosystem. Try to embed yourself in one ecosystem, truly understand it, provide as much value as you can there. And then you have much bigger chances of getting something going that is economical in the end as well. And there are many different niches that still are underdeveloped. And if you can get yourself embedded in something like this and try to build your skill in one specific thing instead of jumping around different ones, then I think you have the best chances to get ahead.
Absolutely. And you talked about bearing down into a niche. Is there a specific niche like blockchain that you guys have chosen, or?
The niche for us is mobile. In terms of blockchain, we have a favorite child, that's Bitcoin, the OG cryptocurrency, of course. But our job as an agency isn't to discourage a customer from using any blockchain if they choose so. We of course try to tell them what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. But in the end, it's the customer that decides that. What we can provide and what is our niche is really the mobile focus, because there are not that many other people that are specialized in that. When it comes to the blockchain, we are agnostic, with one exception that we like a little bit more.
And then when let's say you're using Bitcoin, which is your favorite, I've always heard that building on Bitcoin can be a bit difficult, but maybe you guys are just doing payments. So maybe that's just like Lightning Network. How does that work?
No, you're absolutely right. It was difficult, still is in some circumstances, but the landscape is changing very quickly right now for Bitcoin. In principle, everything that you can do on another chain can be done on a Bitcoin layer 2. Still requires a bit of time to get there, of course, but there are, for example, EVM compatible sidechains, layer 2s of Bitcoin, where you can take a Solidity smart contract, just deploy it there as you would on an EVM chain, and it runs just as well. With the added benefit that you are working with a very proven technology, with something that's adopted by the market, also in terms of the ETFs, and has a high staying power, let's say, compared to other platforms that might come and go. But the technology that has been evolved through altcoins, like the EVM, is a huge advancement. Same with zero knowledge and rollups and all of that. It's just that there's nothing stopping us in principle to do this stuff on Bitcoin. And over a long enough time frame, it will happen on Bitcoin. And then the question is, do you have a long-term mindset and are waiting until this stuff can emerge in Bitcoin? Or are you trying to be very quick and experimental and do the stuff wherever it emerges first? And that's just a different approach you can take.
Absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about, any kind of notable partnerships you guys have created with SayNode.
Yeah. So the biggest client we had the opportunity to work with is VeChain, which is one of the top 50 layer ones. That was one of the first white papers I did my deep dive in when I first looked into crypto. So it was very cool to work with them on an app. And other than that, we mostly work with startups, which is very cool. So some of these names you might have heard of. Probably not, but that's the cool thing. We might be at the verge of a new wave of blockchain adoption fueled by mobile first startups, and being a companion to them, working with them very early on is just cool. Last week we just had another launch for the Legacy Network, which is also a education app that tries to teach personal development, and they already had huge user growth in the first few days. Seeing people launch early with a blockchain product on mobile and getting a lot of traction, that's very cool, and that's why I like to work with startups.
Absolutely. And where can people go to learn more about you, like SayNode, and connect with you online?
Yeah, easiest is to go on SayNode.ch. We're based in Switzerland, hence we have the .ch domain. And since we're a B2B business, for us, LinkedIn is probably the most relevant channel. We are also on Twitter, but less actively so. And then just reach out to me personally, or Werner Liechti, my co-founder, and we're always happy to talk.
Amazing. Well, Renato, thank you so much for coming on here. To all the builders in Web3, everyone looking to found a company, please connect with Renato, and let's get back to building the future.
Thanks for having me. Thanks.